Sounding the gong 3 times, and those who are joining on Zoom cannot hear. Zoom cut out any sounds. So you may come to a meditation posture and a resting position, seated cross-legged or half cross-legged, seated in a chair or lying down. Notice what is occupying your awareness at this moment. If it is wholesome, you may want to cultivate it. If it is unwholesome, you may want to abandon it. Look at that wanting. If that wanting to control the situation makes us tensed, you may notice that too. Because whatever that is connected with calm, abiding, that nurtures our inner peace, that makes us feel spacious and open-hearted. We may nurture and cultivate that. And if your eyes are closed, you may look inside the sight, the darkness, or any patterns or colors or images. These are imaginations. So sense of sight has disappeared. Sounds, sound forms, they come and go. If nothing bothers us, that too disappears from our attention. Smells, tastes, physical sensations, all of these also gradually disappear from our attention as we continue focusing on what is present. What maybe is present, what may be present is in our mind the thoughts that come and go, remaining unaffected with these thoughts, unaffected by their presence, and dropping any weight that you carry out from the past or from any future burdens. If anything bothers you, just acknowledge it and send loving kindness, friendliness to that space. When seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, physical sensations, and thinking, when all of that disappear, our sympathetic nervous system also calm down. Allow your awareness to reveal the rhythm of your breath, the movement in your entire upper body, And every time you feel distracted, you come back to your home. The breath coming in, breath leaving the body. Just as this breath, things come and go. And in the same way, enlightenment, bodhi, reveals itself to disown things and take the controller away with proper insight and tranquility. You may now invite thoughts back to your mind, and you may slowly come out of your meditation, opening your eyes and stretching if needed. So, for this evening, um, we will talk about vegetarianism um, and the way it is discussed in the Buddhist discourses. Um, although some teachings of the Buddha promote looking into what comes out of the mouth, example, uh, right speech, kind and gentle words, few discuss what goes in. So what goes in is the food that we take. Comprehending the and developing the insight about the food that we consume is the focus of some of these teachings, but not to stop people from consuming the food. Um, Monks are supposed to accept whatever meal that is being offered, and there is no specific rule for monks to be completely vegetarian. The Buddha's cousin, Devadatta, he was a monk, and he asked the Buddha to forbid monks um, from eating, um, you know, completely ban eating meat or any fish, anything uh, of that kind. And the Buddha refused this demand. It came as a demand. So Devadatta thought monks should be vegetarian, um, but the Buddha refused that too. But does it make the Buddha someone who ate meat? That we don't know, and no scripture support that claim. Um, so for practical reasons, the Buddha refused this request from Devadatta. And when I say practical reasons, is that monks eat one meal a day, and they abstain from eating, uh, just as they finish their lunch, that is it. They don't eat main meal until the next day. So in that short window of going for alms round in earlier days, monks had to accept whatever was offered. And we need to also place monks in the Jain context where they were extremely non-violent, and that means they refused to eat meat and they liked that kind of practice. And also nowadays, even now in India, uh, I think almost all Hindu practitioners are vegetarian, and cows and monkeys and all these animals are gods in India. So you can eat your god, and there is no way people would uh, kill that kind of animal. Peacocks and all these animals are part of gods, and so for animals, it's a great place to be. So, and the other practical reason is that in some places, like as I have heard from forest monks who have lived in northeastern Thailand, sometimes all they received was a boiled frog, and they had to eat that with a bit of sticky rice, and that will be the only meal that is offered for a couple of days. And if monks refuse to eat that, um, and that they were disgusted, they may not be able to maintain their body and practice and reach enlightenment. So we will discuss about these things based on some of the discourses of the Buddha. In today's discussion, I will be using three discourses, Buddhamansa Sutta, Amaganda Sutta, and Ahara Sutta. These are from Sanyutta, from the Sutta Pitaka. But before I get into the discourses, I like to also highlight that there are these three kinds of purities that the tradition hold, and is also mentioned in the commentaries. I could not find any discourse reference to it, that monks have this understanding um, that whatever food is offered, if it is meat, you have to make sure that you have not seen that the animal was killed for you, you have not heard that it was killed for you, and that you have no doubt in that regard. So The only reference I could find for this so far is Vinaya Saṅgaha Aṭṭhakathā. This is a commentary for the Vinaya Pitaka, the basket of discipline. So the Pali words are Adiṭṭha, not seen, asuta, not heard, and aparisaṅkhita, not doubted. So no doubt. So one time I was in Canada in a very remote lake area, and my friend's friend was a chef, and he cooked a fish dish, and told me that he went fishing and he prepared it for me. So I could not have it. But I wanted to be kind to him, so I asked him to pack it, and I brought it to the temple with me. So because of this promulgation, and that the animal was harmed for me, I could not make up my mind to have it. So this is one example, and I have heard multiple other stories from different monks, who refused to eat like that just when they learned that this animal was killed, its precious life was taken for to prepare this meal. However, the Buddha has forbidden 10 kinds of meat. These include human flesh because it's your own kind, humankind, and elephant meat, horse meat. Elephant and horses are like royal adornment, and the king will be angry, and there will be repercussions afterwards. And also dog meat, snake meat. These are also forbidden, especially dog meat and snake meat. These are like loathsome, and therefore they are not not to be consumed. And other meat include lion, tiger, leopard, bear, and yak. This is a kind of ox living in South Asian regions. And these are dangerous animals, and also now they are endangered. Some of them are endangered. Um, and for the danger of life, for monks who are dwelling in forest areas, these meats are banned. And what is banned also is only flesh, bone, and blood, also liquid, not the milk from these animals. So consuming milk is not there is no rule against that. There is no transgressing of this rule if some monk consumed milk from any of these animals. The way the Buddha is described tasting a meal in Brahmaya Sutta is that the Buddha is rasa sangvedi. He can sense the taste of the food, but rasa raga patisangvedi. He does not indulge. He does not have clinging toward that food. He does not proliferate about it. That there is no craving arising. Those thoughts have vanished from his mind, and he no longer there is no feeding ground in his mind for those thoughts to arise. So that is how he consumed food, and that is how arahants consumed food. So let's begin with this first discourse. This is very tough to understand for most people, but I have the summary of it. In Puttamansa Sutta, this is from the Nidana Vagga, the Buddha is talking about how to cultivate a mental attitude in taking nourishment, like food, by citing an example. There is this married couple with a small baby. This baby son was, they together, they were making a difficult journey with inadequate provision. So before the end of the journey, they ran short of provisions. The three were in danger of perishing. They were crossing a desert. They thought of ways to escape from this difficulty. The married couple came to conceive the idea to continue their journey by consuming the flesh of their baby son. So they killed the baby and cut the flesh into strips and pieces. Then they continued their journey, having consumed. So they ate the flesh of their baby while journeying. At the same time, they beat also their chest and wept, saying, "Where is the only baby son of ours?" So the Buddha halted the conversation there, the narration there, and asked this question. Monks, do the couples take the nourishment? Did this couple take the food for amusement? Did they take it for arrogance? Um, to Did they consume it for adornment? This is kind of reflecting the meal reflection that monks make before taking a meal. And did they take it for beautifying their body? And monks answered no to all these questions. Then the Buddha asked another question. Monks, the couples take the nourishment just enough to complete the difficult journey, isn't it so? And the monks supplicated, this answer, saying, "Yes, Venerable, it is right." So the intention is looked at here. And the Buddha told the monks to keep the attitude of this example in mind um, as they consumed food, that this mental attitude must be born in the mind as in the example in taking nourishment. So this is a very difficult situation for them. Um, I'm not sure if they all had to perish in the desert, or if that could be supported by some people who are reading this narrative. And for some others, they would think that, okay, they can have a baby later, but they need to survive this last stretch of the journey, as the story highlights. They only had this to make this last stretch, and they were just drop dead. They had no energy, and the only way to survive was the baby was gonna die anyway, and I don't know what ways they used to kill the baby, but they apparently did not have the intention um, of killing, but their intention was to feed the body. So this is a very bizarre narrative, but it landed in the discourses of the Buddha, and it is there as part of the Buddhist canon. Having said that, we can switch to the Amaganda Sutta. In it, the idea is that people are defiled not by eating meat, but by engaging in evil conduct. Evil conduct here means stealing, killing, and all the unwholesome activities that people engage with. So that is highlighted in that discourse. So I also have another discourse. This is Ahara Sutta. In it, the Sanyutta Nikaya 4651 in Ahara Sutta, the Buddha defines the four kinds of food: nutriment, which include edible food, contact, intention, and consciousness. These are all, actually, this is 12.11 from the same Sanyutta Nikaya, four kind of nutriment. So the edible food is called Kabalinkara Ahara. So contact is Passa Ahara, and intention is Mano Sanchetanika Ahara, and consciousness as the fourth food, that is Vijnana. And these are the four different ways that we nurture this body. These are called four kinds of nutriment, and comprehending any one of these bring you to enlightenment. So comprehending the nature, the way we deal with the edible food, the way we deal with contact, the way we deal with the intention, the way we deal with consciousness. And this is a discourse about dependent origination, how the experience arises and how the experience vanishes. And in other words, how the craving manifests with regard to these four nutriments and how the craving vanishes. That could be understood if you have some knowledge in dependent origination. So that is the highlight of that discourse. The one the other Ahara Sutta, Ahara is food. This is 4651. The Buddha spells out in detail the factors that nourish the hindrances and those that nourish the awakening factors. So hindrances such as the sensual desire, doubt, restlessness, and aversion. Um, so these hindrances are increased when there are um, causes for them to increase, and they disappear when there is no reason, no feeding ground for them to exist. So that is the idea of that discourse. And then the other interesting part that some people look into is the last meal of the Buddha. This is called Sukara Madhava, the pig's delight. And scholars have found that there is a kind of mushroom also named after it in Nepali regions, and a wild boar, a pig, is able to dig deeper and find this kind of mushroom. So the question then is, did the Buddha accepted this last meal as pork or mushroom? So Chunda is the person who offered it in the city of Pava. This is known as the last meal of the Buddha. And the Buddha consumed this meal out of compassion and asked Ananda, that is Buddha's attendant monk, to bury the remaining food and told that to Chunda too. And the Buddha said that there is no one in this world who can consume this food, that this is the last meal of the Buddha. And then immediately after that, a dysentery the Buddha had before, according to some narratives, got triggered and there was indigestion, and this led to the passing away into parinibbana of the Buddha. So those are some examples that I wanted to bring to the table. And having said that, I've also gathered some other pieces to add into this discussion, such as some Buddhists practice vegetarianism by avoiding meat and fish. These people tend to have low opinion on those people who do not practice vegetarianism. And think of them as persons who are destitute of loving kindness. And if you get angry of what other people are eating, what I notice is that the teachings need to help these people, and sometimes in monastic lineages, it's very often we meet monks who are vegetarian, and sometimes the monks who are seniors say, I am vegetarian, and the whole monastery get only vegetarian food, and some monks who need the proper nutriments of proteins, not plant protein, may not get any protein that way. And some monks use it for their arrogance to say that I am vegetarian, and they use it as an identity. The teachings support dissolving any identity, and therefore this should also be deconstructed. So looking down on people who eat meat, just because they are eating meat, they should not be considered bad people. Hitler, for example, was a vegetarian, and he caused a lot of trouble to the world. And Devadatta was a vegetarian, that is Buddha's cousin, that came up earlier in this discussion, and he caused a lot of trouble. And some monks who promote vegetarianism that way in Theravada tradition sometimes are kind of jokingly called monks from the Devadatta lineage because there was schism, and Venerable Sariputta went and rescued those monks who took part, who took Devadatta's side at the time of the Buddha. But however, jokingly, if any monk promotes vegetarianism and kind of tries to show that he is better than other monks, then his ego is come into a problematic place, and this is also openly discussed by monastic communities. So there is some compassion needed to be cultivated in the minds, and there is some loving kindness. So what about those animals who are being harmed in large scale? That is a different question. I do not support that at all, and I feel the pain when any animal is harmed, and I do not engage in killing living beings. Killing is one of the first first major rules that monks are forbidden from doing. They can't do any killing. So killing living beings is not is out of the question. Well, then there is discussion about vegetations being living creatures. So for vegetarians, then there's that problem to deal with. So I think the middle path teachings of the Buddha promote a kind of path that require us to look into what is happening in our minds and reducing that craving and ultimately letting that craving disappear. So you don't feel disgusted like in Metta Sahagatha Sutta. This discourse is translated as accompanied by loving kindness. This is from Samyutta Nikaya. And there too, that what is disgusting is can be seen as beautiful, what is beautiful can be seen as disgusting. So this kind of training is possible when you develop your mind to such degree. So if some people argue about what other people eat based on their conviction and practice, this can create unpleasant situations and arguments and disputes, and that need to be avoided by looking in at the wisdom cultivation. So the Buddha apparently did not pay attention to eating, what kind of eating monks should do, and when it was brought to his attention, he laid out some rules for practical reasons. Um, so indulging in food is not recommended. In Mahayana tradition, though, as Buddhism spread into China, Japan, and elsewhere, monks and nuns became less dependent on begging for food. It's a practice done in India and in Sri Lanka, Burma, and Thailand. But in those other countries, such as China and other places where there is a harsh winter, they had to prepare a meal. When they prepared a meal for thousands of monks, they did not want to kill. And they had options like tofu, so vegetarian meal was preferred in those monasteries. And killing thousands of animals is a disgusting act and it should be avoided. And that is very clear and anybody can understand it. So monks then chose a vegetarian diet and it continued. But some monks in those traditions also, I have noticed that they choose to eat meat occasionally and they have no problem with it. And in the Mahayana Sutras, Lankavatara Sutra, that came into being in first millennium, calls eating meat the root of great suffering. So because of these discourses, people who practice according to these discourses, sutras, they prefer vegetarianism. In Tibet, with its limited land and challenging climate, year-round vegetarian diet was not always possible. So Tibetan medicine suggested that eating meat had a beneficial and life-prolonging effect on the body. So this is a geographical situation here. So even so, over the centuries, there are some lamas who do eat meat and some lamas who prefer only vegetarian food, and their students also follow the same. All right, that is all for today. I believe if you have questions, feel free to ask them. And I think I have captured everything. Let's see if your sounds work.
Does that work?
Um, can you hear me, Rebecca?
I can hear you. Can you hear
I
me?
can't hear you for some. Do you have a different device that you can switch to?
No, not easily.
Maybe you could type in the comment
Okay. Yeah.
section so that I get what you were trying to say.
Might take me a minute.
Did you send anything or
No, not yet.
you're trying to send it?
I
I'm sorry that we have these technical problems. Oh, yeah. So you will pass because it's hard for you to type the question. And absolutely feel free to send an email so that I will be able to respond if you had a question. All right, let's share merits, and that will be the end of today's session. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Okay, on this day of sleet happening with this storm, may you be safe. May good things happen to you. May you be deeply well. Thank you. Good night.